بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So tonight, inshallah, we're going to continue. Last week we finished actually the first section, which was the things that are shared between everybody that pretty much, as they say, as the author says, that everyone needs when they're learning. And he mentioned 16 things. The second section of the book, as it says in the title, it says, Ya Taliban Kayfa Tahfaz. It mentions 3 sections on the book, but it's actually 4 sections. So that first section was what you need if you're going to memorize, if you're going to read, and if you're trying to understand something. So everything that was in the first section is needed for the rest of the book. The second section is how to memorize, right? The third section is how to read. Not how to read, but there's a way to read. Meaning what books to start with and stuff like that. The last section says Kayfa Tafham, how to understand. This section is really in addition to the first section that we just finished. That's why we're going to do this section next, because it's an additional part, or these are additional things that's needed for everything. Some things in the section of memorizing are specific to memorizing. Some things in the section of reading are specific to reading. And then there's some things that you need for memorizing and for reading. You with me? So I wanted to cover the things that are general for all the sections first, and then inshallah we can do the sections that are a little more specific as far as memorizing and reading, qira'ah. So the author, Hafidullah, he says, Kayfa Tafham. This is the last section, or actually, he gives a general advice at the end. And he says that this section here, yudaf to the mabhath in the beginning, which was the section we just finished, the things that are mushtarika, that are all needed. So he says, number 1, min asbab al-fahm. As he says, from the reasons or the things that are going to help a person with their understanding. Because doing all of that is one thing. Memorizing is one thing. Reading is one thing, but that doesn't necessitate that a person understands what they memorized, and it doesn't necessitate that a person understands what they read, right? Just like right now, there are people who memorize the Quran who don't understand Arabic, right? You might have memorized the surah and you don't understand it word for word, right? You can say a word all the time and don't understand the word. So this section is, as he says, min asbab al-fahm, from the things that help a person with their understanding after what firstly? Before all of that, because you can do all of that and still not come out with anything except by permission of Allah Jalla wa'ala. After Allah's version, Allah's favor on a person. Because you can do all of that and exert your efforts, and it doesn't mean that a person is going to come out what they thought they were going to come out as. Not that you might not get any benefit. And the ulama mentioned stories from the Salaf that people of hadith, a specific story, I don't think he mentioned it in this book. There was another book that I was going to bring, but I forgot to bring it. And this is why there's a section how to read, how to memorize, so that you don't spend years doing something and you don't get in those years what you really were supposed to get had you did it the correct way. So he says, after the virtue and the fadl and the favor of Allah, ba'da fadlillahi ta'ala, kathrat al-istighfar. He said, making a lot of istighfar, seeking Allah's forgiveness often. Astaghfirullah, seeking Allah's forgiveness for our sins. And he said that ذكر بعض أهل العلم أن الاستغفار يعين على وضوء الغامض وعلى كشف المبهم. He says some of the people of knowledge have mentioned that making istighfar, seeking Allah's forgiveness, brings clarity to things that weren't clear. It brings clarity to things that weren't clear, and it removes the kashf. It reveals things that might not have been as clear before that, right? Based on a person making istighfar. Now this is an important point right here. He says, وَاحْتَجُّ بِقَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى. He said they use this ayah from Surah An-Nisa as a dalil for this, right? And this is an example, clear example, of the reality of learning. They use this ayah in Surah An-Nisa, and he said they use this as a dalil. Now, I looked at the ayah, I looked at the tafsir, and honestly, I don't see the wedge. I don't see the angle of proof that they're using for this. That's just me. I'm not saying the sheikh doesn't know. The person teaching the class, I don't understand how that ayah is a dalil for that, based on what I was able to research. If anybody wants to go back and look, it's from Surah An-Nisa, ayahs 105 and 106. Ayahs 105 and 106. And the issue is that the scholars say that the first issue, making a lot of istighfar, seeking Allah's forgiveness often, is a means for clarity in what you're reading. A means for clarity in what you're reading. Wallahu a'lam. I'm not saying it's not a dalil. I'm saying I don't understand the wedge. Even though you can read the ayah, you can read the tafsir, it doesn't necessitate that the person understands the angle, how from that ayah is it a proof for that. It's not really that clear to me. Wallahu a'lam. Tayyib. He says number 2, the second thing, in reality, if this is because this comes under the chapter of kayfa tafham, how to understand something. Tayyib, how do you understand what you're reading, right? Not just reading it, but what is going to help you with understanding what you're reading, seeking Allah's forgiveness often. طيب. He says, secondly, طلب العون من الله تعالى, الاستعانة بالله, seeking Allah's aid, seeking forgiveness, and then seeking Allah's aid, asking Allah to aid you in your understanding, dua. He said, يقول Shaykh al-Islam, did we speak about this last week, Shaykh al-Islam?
Yeah, about how he gets his status.
There you are. That it's not that many people that are famous for that title.
So, one person, yes, you say the name, that's what
Not one person is known for the title right now.
When we say the name, that's what we think of.
And who we talking about? Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah. He says, يقول Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, said about, and this is the second point, seeking Allah's aid and Allah's help when you're trying to understand something. Shaykh al-Islam said, تأملت أنفع الدعاء فإذا هو السؤال العون على مرضاته عز وجل. He said, I was thinking about the most beneficial dua to say. And he said, I found that the best dua to say is asking for Allah's aid in things that are pleasing to Him. Asking for Allah's aid. I found this to be the best dua, right? Shaykh Islam Taymiyyah. Then he said, ثُمَّ رَأَيْتُهُ فِي الْفَاتِحَةِ. Then I found that dua was in Surah Al-Fatiha, the best dua that a person could make. He said, I found that to be in Surah Al-Fatiha. Where in Surah Al-Fatiha are we asking for Allah's help? Huh? إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Right? You alone we worship, and you alone we seek your help alone. Jayyid. It sounds, if we could say elementary, that's going to Fatiha, which goes back to the benefit of Al-Fatiha. All of the and we say all of the gems and the benefits found in Al-Fatiha, that ayat, Shaykh Islam Taymiyyah said, he found that ayat to be one of the greatest du'as that a person can make when they need Allah's help. And of course, in this situation, we all need Allah's help. We're trying to understand what we read and make sure that we're not just reading for the sake of reading. طيب. He says, number 3, الترفق في الفهم وعدم العجلة. This one is being patient with yourself, not being hasty in what you understand on your own. And he mentions at the end what a person should do is once they've read something, that they should check with those people who are more knowledgeable than them to make sure that they're understanding it correctly. So he says, لا تتعجل فتلزم عند قراءتك للكتاب أن هذا هو المراد من قول المؤلف. Because you read something, he said, don't rush and say hands down this is what that means. It's clear, as we said. That's what the wording that we know is clear. It's right there. It means that. That's what it says right there. And somebody else comes and says, it could be, I don't know. It looked like it could mean something. No, that's it. No, that's it right there. He said, don't take that approach, right? He says, but be a little more, and he described it as being gentle. Being gentle with your fahm. It doesn't necessarily mean every time you read something that you're going to understand it the first time you read it. Because what happens is, that's not always the case. And when that's not the case, it leads to something else. Where a person looks at themselves and they think, I might not be built for this. I can't read this, I'm going to grab something else from the shaitan. And they stop reading that and they jump to something else. Then they jump to the other book, and what happens? The exact same thing. Right? The assumption is because I read it, right? Even if it's in English. I read it, I understand English. Right? I'm supposed to understand it the first time I read it. When? That's not the case all the time. That's not always the case. And he mentions the hadith, الرفق ما صاحب شيء إلا زانه. That rifq is not accompanied with something. Gentleness is not with something except that it beautifies a thing. وَمَا نُزِعَ مِنْ شَيْءٍ إِلَّا زَانَ. And it doesn't, when you remove gentleness from something, that it removes the beauty from it. And if you apply that here, it has to do with patience and learning and understanding. That if you remove that gentleness from yourself and from what you understand, it's going to take you down another path. And that path is that you're going to get cut short at some point. This is clear, I understand, then you find out I didn't understand. Whoa. So now what does that mean? Now you got to track back, because when we do that, a lot of times we build other things on top of what we understood from there. So, that's what that means. So that hadith that I read yesterday must have meant that. It was connected, sound like it was connected to that. And this was connected to that in the ayah. And you build a whole chain of events built on something that is not really necessary that it means that. And this is where scholars have difference of opinion, because there's some statements that can be looked at more than one way. It can be understood in 2 different ways, right? The hadith, the ayat, that could be understood in more than one way. Everybody with me? So when you read something, it doesn't necessitate that the ayat means that, or the hadith means that.
What you just said, that an ayat or hadith actually could be looked at from 2 different ways.
Yeah.
So one of my questions, I was going to wait, but since you said it, is it's not always the case where one is right and one is wrong? Or is it just that, because what I've seen when you look at like the explanation of an ayat, it could be 2 different benefits from one ayat. It's not just one, it could be from 2 different angles. But if it's the same point about one ayat, is one right and one wrong, or could both of them be right from 2 totally different angles?
Is one right and is one wrong? It depends on the issue. It depends. You have issues where because one scholar understands it to mean something, it doesn't negate the other meaning. You with me? Where just because you're saying this I means A, it doesn't mean it can't mean B also. You have those issues. Then you have issues of ahkam where some was coming out saying that it's disliked, and some was coming out saying that it's sunnah. Or someone's coming out where they might be on the opposite coins, opposite side of the coin. If they're on opposite sides of the coin, somebody's wrong, right? Allahu A'lam. Now, how does that work? That's a whole conversation in itself. The mujtahid, the sheikh that's saying that this is the sunnah, he has his dalil, he's a mujtahid. He's reached a level that he can look at dalil, he gathered dalil, he does all the things that a mujtahid, that level, that person of that level of scholarship is able to do, and he comes up with his ruling. And then the other one does the same thing, and he comes up with his ruling. Before Allah, in front of Allah, Yawm al-Qiyamah, that's why the Prophet ﷺ said that, right, the mujtahid gets 2 rewards if he's correct, and he gets 1 reward if he's wrong. Somebody's wrong, right? Somebody's wrong in front of Allah Jalla wa'ala. But at that point, they're allowed to do that. A person of that level of knowledge is allowed to make that type of ijtihad and look at the verses and extract benefits and extract rulings and come up after doing their research and come up and say, okay, this is sunnah. And the other one does the same thing. He's on that level. He comes out and says, this is not from the sunnah, right? How is one saying this is sunnah and the other one saying it's not sunnah? Before Allah, they've reached a level of scholarship to be able to do that. But in this life, right now, it's understood as khilaf mu'tabar. It's a respected difference of opinion. Everybody has their proof, and that's the end of the discussion. Now, when they stand before Allah Yawm al-Qiyamah and they reach the level of ijtihad, then Allah will deal with them Yawm al-Qiyamah. Sure.
A situation where Prophet said, Trey Asr better than Quraysh.
Hey.
Some took it to mean go straight in without stopping, and some prayed Asr first.
Nah.
This is from the Sahaba.
Right.
Is that one of the
This is a perfect example. That's a perfect example. Where the Prophet ﷺ told the Sahaba, pray Asr in Bani Quraysh, which is a location. Right? Pray Asr, pray Salat al-Asr in Bani Quraysh. What you understand from that? What does that mean? Pray Asr when you get to Bani Quraysh. Right? That's what some of the Sahaba understood. And some of them prayed when they got to Bani Quraysh. And it was after the time of Asr. Some of them didn't understand it meant pray when you get to Bani Quraysh. They understood it to mean hurry up and to move quickly so you can pray. 2 different understandings, right? The Sahaba, the companions. The Prophet ﷺ didn't criticize either group once he found out what both of them did. You with me? 2 things to be understood. It's not something that's foreign, it's something that happens. And this is how you have khilaf, difference of opinion. And it's all based on something like that. Now a person may say, what's the dalil in that statement? The Prophet ﷺ said, do something, and they understood it. This is the dalil, the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, right? His statement is the proof in this point, right? So he said it, and they understood it, the fahm, the fiqh. The understanding of that dalil is 2 different things. Everybody clear? This group understood it to mean one thing, and this group understood it to mean something else. You with me? Clear? Which shows that it doesn't necessitate, because you understood it that way, I understood it that way, it doesn't understand that's what the author meant. All right? Just like, because they understood to pray when they got there, but that doesn't mean that's what the Prophet ﷺ meant. Right? Others understood it another way. That was a perfect example. It says, when you rush like that, and you make jazm, which is you make it, no, this is what it means. This is what it means right here, it's right there, that's the eye, it's clear. All right? It's nothing to talk about. He says, when you do that, when you read something, you try to understand something, it's possible that you can attribute something to the author that he didn't mean. Because now you carry that and you tell other people. This is what it means, and this is what it said. And Shaykh Uthaymeen said in his book, you got the book set and stuff? Yeah, he said on page 62. That's what it means. Then the person goes and read it, and they might read it like you read it, based on your explanation, right? Which does still, just because they read it like you read it, it doesn't necessitate that that's what it means. Oh yeah?
So if you're in that situation where like you read something, like you say how you said that they didn't know what it meant, but they just kind of like ran with what they thought.
Right.
And say you're in a situation where as though you read something and you're not sure.
Mm.
As far as if somebody asks you about it, should you tell them, I read it, I think this, but I'm not sure, or should you just be like, I don't know what it means?
It depends on the issue. Some issues are straightforward. You read some hadith, and they're straightforward. The Prophet made wudu and he wiped one time. Then there's a hadith after that, he wiped 2 times. There's a hadith after that, he wiped 3 times. So it shows that he did all 3 of them. Right? Some issues of numbers are mentioned. Right? This calls from, in the usul of fiqh is called dalalat al-alfal. Some things, they're categorized. Right? Some numbers, right? When you say a number, it means what it is. There's really no wiggle room. Some issues may need more explanation. So all of this is part of learning. And that's why it says at the end of this one, which is number 3, is that you check with somebody more knowledgeable than you. He says here, check with your mashayikh, which is scholars. And he says, with tulab other students of knowledge. Right? Hatta tastafid, because it may be that you understood it like that, and it may be some people, it may be right. But it may be another way of looking at it. Right? Point being, it doesn't necessitate because you read it like that and you understood it like that everybody else reads it and understands it like that. So if you're in a situation like that and you're not sure, you haven't checked it, I read something on it, you can go check it out. At least point them to, especially if it's a hadith, point them to it, they can go check it out themselves. They might know somebody, they can go ask about it. It's not that we got to be enclosed, we can't say anything. But he says, don't do jazm. This is what it is, hands down, there's nothing to talk about. طيب. And he brings an example of that here, but I think that's enough for that. طيب. He says at the end, وَلَا تَنْسَبْ خَطَأً لِأَهْلِ الْعِلْمِ. Basically, you don't want to attribute something incorrect to the people of knowledge. That's not what they meant. That's what you understood. Right? I understood that, but that's not what the author meant by that statement. It means something else. And that happened a lot of times. That happens a lot of times. I remember we would ask Shaykh al-Majid, Hafidullah, we'd be in class and he would say something, and we would let him know what we understood by what he just said. So, Tayyib Shaykh, that means such and such, right? La. That's what you just said. I didn't say that. I said this. You say the same statement again. Like, when you say that, I understand this. That's a khata. That's a mistake in what you understood. What I'm saying is this, and what you're understanding is something else. Well, how am I supposed to understand that? It could be a backdrop to that statement. You know what I'm saying? It could be other things that affect that statement. But so the point is not to say everything you read you got to be questionable about. It says no, but don't be so hard to make it say this is it, it's hands down, nothing to talk about. Because then what happens when somebody comes to you, and this happened to me on a lot of issues. Somebody comes to you and they say, oh yeah, some of the scholars do say that, but that's the minority opinion. Majority of the Salaf, they say this, and this is the hadith, the Sahih Bukhari, the Sahih Muslim, and this, and the hadith that you're using, the hadith the scholars use for that, it is a hadith, but it's some kalam on it. Some of the ulama say it's weak. I've been living on this hadith my whole life. I never even knew it was a hadith in Bukhari and Muslim that goes against that. Never even knew how did it. If you got to be strong enough to accept that, you understand what I'm saying? Because it can shake you, depending on the issue. It could be deep, it could be heavy. So you got to be careful not to make sure everything is hands down, cut and dry. Some things are, but not everything.
So
that's like this, if that's the situation where somebody asks the question, it's like, if somebody asks you,
Mm.
yeah, I read it, but this is what I understand. Or is that more, if it's something like that, where there's a difference of opinion, should you kind of, where's the line where you say, all right, stay in your lane?
It's no, most of us, what we're doing is always saying is, for the majority part, we're saying, Sheikh Uthaymeen or Sheikh bin Baz explained it like this. And that's enough. That's enough for a person. Because most of us are not at the level to be able to say, nah, Sheikh Uthaymeen made a mistake. Nah, most of us are going to say, well, Sheikh Uthaymeen, Sheikh bin Baz, rahimahullah, explained it like this in his book. Somebody else is going to come and say, well, Sheikh al-Albani explained it like this. Cool. That's why they differ. It's the same as they both have the little. It's not that deep. You understand? Now, what happens after that? If that happens, you have the ability now to look at both things and say, wow, that's an interesting difference. Does that mean you can't tell somebody else? All you're doing, all you want to make sure is you're attributing to the person, to the author, the correct statement.
I guess you kind of touched on it, because my point being, like you said, all of us are on that level, right? So it's, how do you get determined, or do you just kind of
Basically,
concern yourself with that right now? You just,
in a situation like that, we are what we call blind followers. Muqallid. We're muqallid, we're blind followers in that case. Why? Because number one, if the sheikh told you the dalil, you might not even understand the dalil. So how do you, the person who is not at that level, how do they have the audacity to say anything? You don't even understand the dalil itself, right? If I don't understand the dalil, how am I going to say the sheikh's wrong? And what he came to at the end, his result, right? Ireland, scholar, like it's not a regular brother walking around, me and him took shahada together, no. Sheikh bin Baz, rahimahullah. You come and say, well, he handled the dalil for that. MashaAllah, you got the dalil right here. Oh, that hadith don't mean that. MashaAllah. You read it in English, what do you mean? Right? You're reading in English and you're basing your understanding, right? In reality, I'm reading it in English and I'm basing my understanding on how the translator translated it. Right? And there's some things, when it comes to dalil and istidlal, there's some things that can't be translated. Like some things that have to be a drawn out conversation. That's just what it is. It's not a knock on the translator. It's not a knock on the person who doesn't know Arabic. It's just the reality. Some things can't be translated like that. Some things you have to be able to dive in and understand the issue. If you don't, then in that case, you just trust in the person of knowledge. And that's the job of the person who doesn't have the ability to go that far. As Allah says in the Quran. Ask people of knowledge if you don't know. As long as a person asks somebody more knowledgeable than them, they've done what they're obliged to do. Right? So in that case, we go as far as we can go and then we leave it. It's nothing to overburden ourselves with, inshallah.
See, you just explained what I was going to ask, but that translation is just, sometimes, just from understanding basic principles of Islam, you can read something from Uthaymeen, and even if you're a layman that don't really know a lot of Arabic, you can say, it's not a good translation, because it goes against a principle that's known, even in English. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But this is a problem that we have in now, that people reading books, and they read one thing and then go, this is what it is, boom, flat out. You understand? So this point
No
that you're
doubt.
touching is important.
That's because most of that attitude comes from not going through books like this. Adab Talib al-Ilm. The behavior and the character of the person that's learning. We learning. We all learning. And when you're learning, there's a certain way you carry yourself. There's a certain way you ask a question. There's a certain way you approach. There's a certain way you read. That's why I said that's what the book is about. How do you do this? How do you do that? There's a certain way you look at stuff when you're trying to understand something. And this is one of them. You don't come down with the hammer, that's it. You're going to have a problem after that. Because knowledge is not like that. طيب, this is an important issue, the next one, number 4, التدرج في القراءة. Taking steps when it comes to reading. He said this is from the greatest, من أعظم أسباب الفهم. From the greatest reasons or things that help a person understand is that a person reads in stages. that there's stages. Everybody with me? What stages means? Does anybody know what I mean by that? Stages?
Beginning, the next level.
Levels. There are levels. There are levels of books that you should start with. Where should you start? Everybody with me? What'd you say?
I was gonna say the front.
Oh, I thought you said the front of the book.
No.
That's what we say. So hey, the fundamentals not. I said no doubt the front of the book. And this is the next question. You gotta know what the front of the I'm not the front of the book, sorry. You gotta know what the fundamentals are. Right? That's another, it takes, because a person might think, and there's people that do this, a person might think, well, I'm gonna start with, if I'm gonna start with hadith, what's the best book of hadith that I can start with? Sahih Bukhari. Right? The Sahihain, and then after Sahih Bukhari, what? Sahih Muslim. Right? But that's a mistake for the talib, for the person that's learning, that's a mistake, that's out of order. That's not the daraj. Why? And he mentions that specifically. He says, فَلَا تَبْدَأْ بِالْمُطَوَّلَاتِ فِي أَوَّلِ الطَّرِيقِ. Don't start with those long books like that when you first start out. Sahih Bukhari is 9 volumes, 8 volumes. It's long enough, 7,000 hadith, more than 7,000 hadith in Sahih Bukhari. A beginning student is not going to make it. Right? He says this is going to lead to a person's discouragement, being discouraged and finishing. Hifdh Sahih Bukhari, memorizing Sahih Bukhari, just reading through Sahih Bukhari. Right, by itself. Not let alone memorizing it, let alone understanding the hadith and all the words in it. That's not the way. So he says, وَلَكِنْ تَمَهَّنْ وَعَلَيْكَ بِالتَّرَفُقِ. He says, but take your time and be gentle with yourself and start with the books that are short. Start with the books that are short. As he says, the shorter a book is, the better and the more beneficial it is for you. In the beginning, the shorter the book is, the more beneficial. It's short, straight to the point. You get the idea, that's it, move on. There's no way, as Imam al-Zuhri rahimahullah said, there's no way you're going to learn everything out of one book. It doesn't happen like that. It doesn't happen in the 3 months, this 3 month stint. You got everything that you need. That's why he said, whoever tries to get all of their knowledge in one sitting, they're going to lose all that knowledge in one sitting. Whoever tries to get everything at once, right? They're going to lose it all at once. He said, the knowledge is sought over days and nights. Time, takes time. That's why when you read the biographies of the ulama, you see that they spent, like Abdullah Mubarak said, we spent 20 years learning adab. 20 years learning adab. And then we spent 30 years learning the other sciences. Time. It's not going to happen overnight. So he says the shorter the book is, the better. And the better it'll be for the person that you're relaying the information to. Right? And he gives the example, exactly that example. He says, and this is witnessed, فَمَثَلًا بَعْضَ النَّاسِ إِذَا أَرَادَ أَنْ يَحْفَظْ فِي الْحَدِيثِ يَبْدَأُ بِالصَّحِيحَيْنِ. Some people, when they want to start memorizing hadith, they go right to Bukhari, and they go to Muslim. Alright? The most authentic books, they go to Bukhari and Muslim. He says, Al-Lu'lu' al-Murjan, another book of hadith. He said, but they get worn out. They wear themselves out because the books are too big. For the beginning, the books are too big. Those books are good. There's nothing wrong with the book for a certain level. For a certain level. That's not the book you start with for everybody. And those who start outside of the proper level, they're going to crash, as we say, hit a wall. He says that they're going to be tired when in qatir. He's going to stop learning and he didn't even get started yet. And I've seen that happen. You figure, it's hadith, it's Sahih Bukhari. Who don't want to study Bukhari? Who don't understand the hadith of Bukhari? So you get there and you barely know Arabic. Right? And you sit in the books, you sit in the classes with the ulama teaching, fact of the bad. Right? Allah understand. I sat in the Fatul Bari class, and this was late. This was late in my studies, late. I sat in the Fatul Bari class with Sheikh Muhammad Ali Adam, Ethiopia. Right? I don't know if y'all know him, but all the men know him. Everybody, all of the scholars know him. We might not know him, but all of the scholars, they all know him. Everybody that we love from the ulama, they know Sheikh Muhammad Ali Adam, Ethiopia, if we don't know. I went to the Sahih Bukhari class, and I was sitting there, right? And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I'm reading, and I'm looking around. Am I the only one that don't know what's going on? And this was like towards the end. And I'm looking at the book, and I'm like, where is it? I'm asking, looking at the shit, I'm like, this is out of my league. He was doing everything. He was doing everything when he was explaining Sahih Bukhari. He was doing Nahu, he was doing grammar, he was doing Sarf, he was doing Fiqh, he was doing Usul al-Fiqh, all in the same class. He was doing Ilm al-Rijal, who are the people in the chain? Who are the men that are narrating? An. This is Abdullah such and such. This is such and such. This is Hassan such and such. He's doing all of that. And he's critiquing people. And he's saying all at the same time in one. Right? So I said, I don't know what's going on. I'm going to just focus on one thing. Try to focus on one thing. I thought it was the speakers at first. I said, let me move a little closer to the speaker. I got closer. It was better, but it wasn't the speaker. It wasn't the speaker. So if you continue like that, and it's not in your level, you got to be honest enough to say that's over my head. I'm out my league with that. I need to find a lesson that's more on my level. He said when people do that, they end up quitting before they even get started in the beginning. Then he said you have some people, بعضهم يبدأ مثلا ب40 النووي, the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah. Right? And this is why you see those questions, what book should the beginner student knowledge start with? It's for this reason, so that you don't jump into level 3 and you're in level 1. You don't jump into level 6 and you're in level 3. That you make sure you enter the door through the right door. This way you don't waste time. You don't waste time struggling because you're out of your lane, as we say. He said, if a person feels like, if a person feels like they've mastered 40 hadith, it's about 42, or 50 with the additions from Ibn Rajab. If a person mastered those hadith, right? He says, وَقَدْ حَفِظَ مَتْنًا كَامِلًا, and he memorized the whole matan, he memorized the whole book, he memorized those 42, or let's say 50 hadith. He says, if they want to do that, then after that they move on to a larger book. What's the next book after that? Bulugh Maram? Mumkin. Bulugh Maram is like 1400 hadith. It's a book shorter than that. Umdat al-Ahkam. Umdat al-Ahkam. Umdat al-Ahkam is about 400 hadith. About 400, a little over 400 hadith. After Arba'in an-Nawawi. Yes.
So you're saying that you should start with Arba'in an-Nawawi?
You should start with Arba'in an-Nawawi. The benefit of that is why it's what we say entry level. 40 hadith, they're important, and the scholars since the time of Imam an-Nawawi have recognized the importance of those hadith. Right? Now it's not like, right? He's not saying that this is the only book you can start with, because there is no list of books that every person in the world that wants to learn has to start with, right? But we know the best book to start with is the Quran. All over the world, that's the best book to start with, hands down. After that, you have, let's just say, in this part of the world, they might say these books. You go to another part of the world, they don't mention any of those books. They got a whole other list of books. That's not a problem of the name of the book. It's the same information, maybe by a different author. An author that you never heard of. Impossible. But an author that the books that you read, the author of those books, they've heard of him and they praise that author. So it's not always about who we know and what we know specifically. It's the information. So he says after a person's mastered that, then they move on to a book that's a little more, a book bigger than that. And that's for every science. Every science is like that. In hadith, in fiqh, usul al-fiqh, seerah. Every book or every science, they have introductory level books. That the beginner should start with this. Once you master that, okay, there's another book with a little more information in it. You should go to that book. Once you've mastered that, then you should move to the next level like that. That's why it's called at-tadarruj. It's in levels. And if a person goes outside the level, it's harmful in the long run. It's harmful in the long run. طيب, he says number 5. He says number 5 the same way, and he mentions that the section we didn't do is about reading. But there's a section in the reading section, how to read, that mentions that you should break up, divide what you're reading, break it up. It's not necessary, for example, let's just say during Ramadan, for example, a person trying to read a juz a day, right? A person said, I'm going to read a juz a day so I can finish the Quran, right, during Ramadan. Like, it doesn't necessitate that whole juz has to be read after Fajr, right? A person may not be able to do that. Some people can, some people can't. My work schedule doesn't allow me to do that. I got obligations in the morning. So that's the idea behind breaking up what you read. And depending on what you're reading, it might be too much to take in all at one time, right? Depending on the subject matter. Sometimes you might have to break it up. Do half in the morning and do half at night. Like a subject like usul al-fiqh takes a lot of concentration. You gotta be focused because they have terms that they use that they have specific meanings in this science. Outside of this science, it means something else. So you have to be focused, you have to understand this author uses this word like this, and other authors don't use that word like that. So it takes a lot more focus. So sometimes, depending on the book, you read 2-3 pages, you're like, man, that was a lot to understand, breaking down the sentences and all that. So you might have to come back. Other scientists might not take that much. For example, seerah, the stories of the Prophet ﷺ, they like stories. You can kind of listen casually and grasp it, right? It might not take as much focus. You can just listen and follow the story, and that's the story. That's what it was. You with me? So the same way he says that you break down your reading, he says that a person should break down what they're trying to understand. He says, so if you read one, he said, إِذَا قَرَأْتَ أَحْرِصْ أَلَّا تَتَجَاوَزْ سَطْرًا بَلْ وَلَا كَلِمَ حَتَّى تَفْهَمُهَا. He said that you should make sure that when you're reading, that you don't come across one line, except make sure you understand what you're reading. Don't just skip over it. Skip down here. Right? That's what we do sometimes, I'll be honest with you, sometimes it's not you. Sometimes it's the translator. Translating is a big job. It's a trust, because the people are only going to understand based on the way you translate it. So it's a trust. If the person could go to the source, they wouldn't need the translator. So now the translator is the middleman. That means he has to, or she has to, bring the qasd of the author as best as they can to the person reading in that other language. It takes a lot. It's not something that's for everybody. I'm talking about, not that everybody can change. I'm talking about pro translators and stuff like that.
So what if you know how to read Arabic and you come across something you don't, like how you said the sheikh, he would say something to you, but you would take it differently. You wouldn't understand necessarily what he was saying. How would you go about that if you read something? Even if you like look at it in Arabic, like you read it, but you like, I still don't get what he's saying.
If you read it in Arabic?
Yeah.
Or English? You said in Arabic?
Arabic.
And what happens?
If you read it, and like you said, how your teacher, your professor would say things to you, and you wouldn't understand what he was saying, but he knew what he meant.
Oh, I understood him.
What if you read it, And it's like, all right, I get what he's saying, but I know that's not what he's trying to say. You're not understanding what he's trying to say.
You read it and you know that's not what they're trying to say?
Yeah. It might be, you might read it, but that's not down below in this book. I know that's not what he's saying.
There's a couple things. It could be the context that it's in. It could be a lot of things. If you're saying like that, it could be a lot of things. It could be a misprint. It could be what they call suck. A word is left out of the sentence, right? It don't make sense like that.
That's what I'm
Like that sentence doesn't make sense like that. He couldn't have meant that because that doesn't make sense like that. From, like he said, from previous information that you have. You have previous information, for example. If you say that equals shirk, for example. That means the person put parts of the law. So he couldn't have meant that. So maybe it's a mistake in the print. It could be. It could be a lot of things. It could be that you got to go back and read the entire page before. Maybe he's building on something that he spoke about 2 chapters before. It could be a lot of things. But if that's the case, then you want to look at it and make an excuse for the author. Because most people read the books of people they trust. Right? If you're trying to learn something, right, you're looking for books by certain authors. Right? Everybody looking for a book. Sheikh, on his book, he got a book on this, you go get that book. So now, when you find something in the book that looks crazy, as we said, that looks crazy, right? As the student, and as the Muslim in general, you make excuses for your brother. Sheikh couldn't have meant that. Not the Sheikh, he couldn't have meant that. Something's missing, I gotta figure out what's going on, because that can't be that. Unless I'm understanding it wrong. Maybe I'm understanding it wrong. So you might ask somebody else, say, no, that looks funny. Like maybe it's something dropped out. It could be a lot of things.
So that's when you would go to the point of asking somebody.
Right. And that also connects to the previous point that everything that we read doesn't necessarily mean that's what it is. That's the importance of checking with others and building and, as we say, bouncing ideas off each other. Sometimes we so sensitive now, everybody's sensitive. You come ask a brother something, he think you're trying to test him. See what you know. I'm just trying to make sure maybe you understood it different, right? We think everybody's trying to test us and see what we know and we on guard. Allah Mustaan. Tayyib. He says, so in that case, a person takes a portion, person takes a portion at a time. And they shouldn't just, as we say, run through it and skip over things, knowing that they didn't really understand it, knowing that they didn't understand it. He says, so if you're not able to understand something, an issue, he says, فَلَا تَكُونَ الْمَسْأَلَةَ عَائِقًا لَكَ عَنِ الْإِسْتِمْرَارِ. Because you don't understand this issue here, don't let that stop you from continuing to read. Don't stop there. I don't understand. I'm done with this book. It's just too much. I'm this. Right? You've been good up to now. You get to page 64, you can't get past this issue. He said, don't let that be a deterrent for you to stop. Don't make that be a deterrent for you to continue. That you should continue going. He says, but put a line under it. I gotta get back to this. This I gotta come back to. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't want to be being too hard on yourself. I don't understand that. Because if you have that attitude, you're gonna go get another book and you're gonna do the same thing. The same thing is gonna apply. He says, put a line on it and come back to it. And there was a lot of issues that we had to do that for. A lot of issues. You put a line on it. You really, really want to figure it out right now. But in honesty, the test is on Monday. You still got a whole book to read a couple of times. Make sure you understand it so there's no time to do, right, as we say, a bath. There's no time to do a research on that issue right now. That's going to take some research. I don't have time right now to do a research on that. So you make a note in the book. I need to come back to this after Ikhtibara, after the test over. Tayyib, he says number 6, istijma' al-dhihn. This has to do with, and it differs for everybody. Everybody's different. Putting yourself in a comfortable environment to be able to focus and read. And it's different. There's nothing etched in stone that you have to sit in such and such place between this time and this time. What works for you, because maybe a person, they can't sit and such, they can't do, that's good for you, but it's not good for them. So he says basically, here, and this applies, and it comes in when you try to memorize something and when you read something, that you want to be not comfortable go to sleep, comfortable set up to be able to read and prepare yourself. Right? You know, before you're ready, you got to set all your stuff up. Right? Set the chair and set everything up. You like everything a certain way, so you don't have to get up. You know, you're trying to set up so you don't have to get up no time soon. All right. That's going to differ for everybody. Some people like soft chairs, some people like medium. Whatever you like, you set it up so that you can continue and focus. It's all built on focus. It says the better, the more relaxed a person is, and the more, as he says, more the more relaxed they are and the more comfortable they are in that position, he said, "Kana dhalika afdal," that's better. Why? Because it's all about the brain being able to focus on what you're trying to understand. And he says, this is min hikmat tashri' fi qawli sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, la salata bi hadrat al-ta'am. The hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, there's no salat when the food is being served. There's no salat when the food is being served. Everybody know this hadith? Why is there no salat when the food is being served? There you go. The brain is going to be busy with the food. Their brain is not going to be focused, as he says. Their brain is not focused on the what you're saying in the record. They're not focused on what the imam is reciting. They're worried about and hoping that the imam don't read nothing too long.
This may be a little off topic, but my experience last week. Right. Let's say your wife cooked the food, you know what I mean? And then only she got left with the biscuits. So you like, I mean, I know.
I'm with you.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, the biscuits.
So you like, you still want to offer, you like, the food is technically not done. You know what I mean? So like, you don't want to miss this a lot, but then you like, biscuits be ready in 2 or 3 minutes.
Come on now.
I know. I know it's a little off.
Kill me with the biscuits. No, I feel you. No. The point is, the biscuits are large. No, I feel you. The point is that the person doesn't pray and their brain is, because this is the reality. We can always eat. Like, I can always go for something to eat. But is it to the point that if I don't eat, it's going to disturb me? Right? If the food is ready, eat. Now, the biscuit's not ready, but I'm just saying the food is ready. If the food is ready, your wife serves the food, you can eat the food. You might say, honestly, it doesn't mean if the food is ready, you have to eat, because you might not want to eat right now. Right? You might not want to eat the food that you desire to eat, then you should eat. Because if you don't eat, you're going to be, and you wanted to eat, that is when you're going to lose your focus. But nobody eats when they're not hungry anyway. I'm not just going to eat just to eat. I'm cool, I'm going to wait. I'll probably eat like 9. Right? The food that's going to disturb a person from focusing on the salah. Right? And this is why some people, a brother said one time he went to a masjid and it was Ramadan. So he said he wasn't going back to that masjid. Right? Did you tell me that? So I said, well, what's the problem? He said, because when they called the adhan for Maghrib in Ramadan and everybody broke fast, he said they ate a meal. They ate chicken and rice, or whatever they had. They had they didn't like have dates and water. They had dates and water, but they had a whole spread of food. So they ate a spread of food, and then they prayed. So I'm like, well, what's the problem? That they had a whole spread of food. So what's the problem? Because in reality, it may be that people need to remove that so they can focus on the salah. I mean, it's not like you call the adhan at 8 o'clock and you pray at 8:03. Most people wait 10, 15 minutes to eat, to call the iqamah anyway. So if they ate between the adhan and the iqamah, right, then there's no harm in it. It's not like they delayed the salah outside of their time. If it's a need, then you eat the food. But nobody's forced food when you're not even hungry. Everybody get it? It's not that every time you walk by food, it's time to pray, gotta stop and eat. If you're hungry and you want to eat, if you desire to eat, then yeah. And there's no problem with that. There's no problem with Shalom. He says after that, and he mentions all of that we just talked about. He said all of that. If a person is praying and they're hungry, jarian, or akshan, they're thirsty, he says, فَلَا يُمْكِنْ أَنْ يَحْصُلَ الْخُشُوعِ. They're not going to be able to focus and concentrate on the salah. Right? And you're not going to be able to focus on what the imam is reading. Right? They're not, as he says, they won't even be able to taste the sweetness of the adhkar that they're saying when they're in ruku' and in sajda. That they're not focused. There's no focus. All the focus is on finishing.
They said that it's similar to when you gotta use the restroom, right?
There you are. You have to use the restroom.
It's the same.
The same idea. Anything that's going to distract a person from focusing in the salah, it should be done before they start the salah. That's why some of the other matters say it's dislike for a person to pray and you know you have to go to the bathroom. I gotta go to the bathroom, but they get ready to call the account. So if I go to the bathroom, I know I'm gonna miss at least 2 rak'ah. Right? I know I'm gonna miss at least 2. Use the bathroom, maybe to do, right? I'm gonna miss at least 2. So I'm gonna just pray, knowing you gotta go to the bathroom. Now what happens when you do that and then the imam reads something long? Right? Now, everything is out the window. It's just, right? It's just a hurry up and a person loses focus. Let's finish this, inshallah. He says, also, and this is all under the brain being focused and being in a comfortable place to be able to focus on what you're reading. He says, if a person is relaxed, muhayyan, nafsiyan, he said that when a person is relaxed like this, and this is going to affect how they digest things. Number 1, he says, كَذَلِكَ فِي الْفَهْمِ لَا تَقْنُطْ. He says also, don't lose hope. Don't lose hope when you don't understand something. And this is important because it's from the shaitan, Iblis, that it's an encouragement. This is from, as many of the ulama, the scholars say, learning is from the best recommended acts. Learning, seeking knowledge and learning deen is the best recommended act that a person can do. So why would the shaitan want a bunch of people doing that? Right? So any way he can distract us and pull us off, then he'll try it. So one of the ways is you don't understand something right away and now you get discouraged. Right? So he says, فإذا قرأت ولم تفهم مسألة أو مسألتين فجاهد نفسك على عدم اتخاذ. If you read something, you don't understand this, you don't understand, he said you got to fight against yourself. You got to fight against yourself not to give up, not to get discouraged. The more you learn, the more you're going to see how much you really don't know. That's just how it goes. The less people learn, the less we learn, we think we know everything. And once you start really learning, you say, I got a lot more to learn. So he said we got to fight against ourselves. He says, فَلَوْ تَقْرَأَ مِئَةَ مَسْأَلَةً. If you read 100 different issues, وَتَفْهَمْ مَسْأَلَةً, and you only understood 1 out of 100. He says, in that case, then you benefited. You still benefit, at the least. At the least, you're on the road that the Prophet ﷺ said, and سَلَكَ طَرِيقًا. Whoever goes down that path seeking knowledge, right? That Allah is going to make the path to paradise easy for him, even if a person doesn't arrive and reach a high level. So he says, if you only understood 1 issue out of 100, you still benefit. He says, so don't give up or feel discouraged. That's firstly, because you benefit. He says, secondly, إنك فهمت مسألة وفهم المسألة نعمة من نعم الله تعالى. He said, firstly, you only understood 1 issue, but understanding, fahm by itself, the fact that you understood it, that in itself is a blessing from Allah. By itself, the fact that you even understood the issue is a blessing from Allah Jalla wa Ala. So it's nothing to get discouraged about. The fact that you understood it is a blessing from Allah Jalla wa Ala. He says, and the benefit brings about more benefit. Al-fa'ida tajurru ukhtuha. That a benefit brings more benefits. right? You put yourself, as people describe it, in good company, and good things come. You're around good people, right? And more good comes. That the reward for good is good. Just like obedience breeds more obedience to Allah. Ta'ah. Obedience to Allah breeds more obedience to Allah Jalla wa Ala. We'll stop there so we can pray, inshallah ta'ala. Okay. Shit. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. Going back to that verse, I looked at the verse, and I think I have something that goes with it.
J.
The end of Ayatul Day,
Okay.
where Allah says, "Wattaqullah wa yu'allimukumullah."
J.
So if a person his taqwa is going down and he becomes disobedient, that's what istighfar comes, because when you're in your taqwa, Allah is helping you learn. Allah is teaching you. So when you get weak a little bit, then refer to the istighfar.
J. I like that. Because what I was doing was looking at, that's the ayat in the beginning, where the scholars say that istighfar, seeking Allah's forgiveness, is a means for things becoming clear, right? And then they brought an ayat from Surah An-Nisa. I looked at the ayat, and just me personally, I didn't see anything from that ayat. I didn't understand, as they call it, wajh al-istidlal, the angle that they're using this ayat for is a dalil. Sheikh says, right, which is, there's nothing wrong with it, going outside of this ayat. If you go outside of this ayat where Allah says, and fear Allah, and Allah will teach you. Right? Fear Allah, and Allah will teach you. So if a person is fearing Allah, then they're making a lot of istighfar. They're seeking Allah's forgiveness a lot. Right? If you seek Allah's forgiveness a lot, obedient to Allah, then Allah said in the Quran, obey Allah and Allah will teach you. Right? Which could go together. J. You see how that works? And that happens a lot. A person says, no, it can't be that. And if you look at it, maybe it can't be like that. But if you gather everything according to the issue, then it's a different look. It looks different when you gather everything around the issue. And that's another important issue that maybe we could talk about at another time. That when rulings are made, a lot of times it's not based on just one verse or just this one thing. The ulama do an extensive research surrounding the issue before they come and say, okay, this is bid'ah, this is sunnah, this is halal, wajib. There has to be extensive research done, not just one verse or one hadith. And then we come and say, well, for practice, as a means of practice, what we would do is, all right, this is not a fatwa, none of that. Just, we're practicing. Look at this hadith, and based on the hadith, only this one, right? That means we can't do anything outside of this. So like Sheikh used another verse to support that verse, right? For practice, we do this. Only based on this hadith, we pull on the rulings out of this only. You can't use anything, any back information from somewhere else, no, only from what's in front of us, right? We might do that for practice. But when it comes to real life, people come in and ask my questions and stuff like that, no, it's opened up. Everything has to be considered before they give a hukm or ruling on something. Allahu a'lam. Any other questions?
That's about the class we had this week.
Mm.
You said all you gotta do is write about the report, right?
Yeah. That's right. Istinja. Okay.
What advice would you give a person that wants to seek knowledge, but they find themselves following their desires, you know what I mean? Maybe social media, things on the internet, stuff like that, or their family isn't as diligent and keen to, studying with them. What advice would you give a person like that?
As far as your family, don't break them. Don't break people. Everybody's not. Talabul ilm is not for everybody. We gotta be honest and realize that it's not for everybody. Certain things are that we need to function as Muslims, right? No escaping that. Going further, a person has to want to do it. You don't want to break nobody. You want to let people be the Muslims in their area that they are. They're comfortable with that. They're doing what they need to do. It's a hadith, and everybody need to know before the hadith. About the person who does the obligatory things. He said, if I do that, will I enter paradise? Will I enter just on that? Yes, khalas. As they say, happy wife, happy life, right? Don't break them, because everybody's not, as we say, everybody's not built for it. As far as the person who is being tested with other distractions, based on what I've seen here, in the type of environment we're in, you have to like really, really, as we say, go in your bag. And you have to be comfortable with not talking to people a lot. You have to be comfortable with not really having conversations with a lot of people. You have to be comfortable being on your own as books become your new friends and stuff like that. Everybody's not doing that. So everybody doesn't understand the time that you need to do what you're trying to do. People don't understand. It's just a normal. People don't know that it takes me, right? It might take you. I need this hour and a half. I don't really have 10 minutes to talk about that because now I don't have an hour and a half, right? People don't understand that. So if you really go down that path in this environment that we're in, a lot of people have to be not cut off like it's a problem, but cut off. Like I gotta be stingy with my time. That's just what I've seen works. Sometimes, and everybody, they might look at you funny. You don't use social media. Who don't use social media? You don't have no. You want something else, right? You become the eyeball, which the majority are not doing that. So it is a sense of being strange. And I think he mentioned that. Did we do that last week? Oh, that's another book. I'm sorry. It was another benefit from the books, Abu Saajid, Sheikh Abdul Muhsin Al-Qasim, and he was talking about the Talib al-Ilm, and he mentioned the strangeness that comes along with it. That you're strange. You're not like everybody. Everybody's not doing that. Everybody, the majority of people, are not sitting up reading books for hours after Fajr. It's just not. That's not what it is. It's not real. It's not reality of life. So therefore, you become from a small group of people who do that. And when you're from a small group, that small group is strange. It's not what it's not the norm or what everybody's doing. You gotta be comfortable in that strangeness. You understand what I'm saying? And there's nothing against anybody else, but it's just the reality of how things work. There was a time we used to think that everybody had to be a student, right? We used to treat people like if you wasn't studying the Medina book, or if you wasn't studying this book, then you're talking about grind you up. Everybody had to have a Medina. Like, we native people, everybody had to be a Taliban, and that's not reality. The Muslim world doesn't live like that. We were trying to make it like that amongst us, but that's not how societies operate. You have people who do that, and then you have people who are doctors, and people who are construction workers, and people who work on this, and people who do this. This is a society. If everybody's sitting in the masjid or sitting at home reading, like, where are we going to get the other things we need for the Muslims from? So it's not realistic. So it becomes an area where there's some strangeness in it. There's some isolation. And sometimes you got to explain it to people because other people don't understand. But it's just like anything else we're trying to do. When anything we're focusing on, right? Anything that we choose to focus on, as we say, and we know we get ready to get busy with that, right? We got a bunch of statements we say for it, and one of them, get ready to get busy. I'm going to get busy with this, so I'm going to be busy for like a couple months. You might not see me for this amount of time because I'm going to go in on this, right? It's the same idea. I got to finish this by this time, so I got to dedicate more time, so I might not, you know what I'm saying? I might not be where, right? It's the same thing. If you go in, there's going to be some isolation and some strangeness, but if you choose to do that, you just have to be comfortable with that strangeness, because it's going to be like that. And there's nothing against people who are not doing it. It's just the reality. Hopefully, as that narration says, if you can't be a student of knowledge, then you should love the people and hopefully people respect it, right? But it's not peaches and cream, as they say. Because this stuff, it sounds good now, but if you really delve into it, it happens a lot. You come across stuff, you don't understand it, you don't understand it, you don't understand it. They said Imam Ahmed studied the chapter of Hayd 8 years. Imam Ahmed, 8 years studying the book of Menses. Imam Ahmed, Ibn Hanbal, 8 years. We're near their level of knowledge, and we get thrown off. We read it twice, and we ready to quit. You with me? Charlotte.
A couple of us, like the brother over there, we have a lot of gray in our beards. We come across some research for how the older person can retain being a student of knowledge. You appreciate that, my brother? I'm not speaking just for myself. For myself, you know. Maybe it's not him, but I know I can't hold it the way I used to hold it. Retain it the way I used to retain it.
Honestly, I haven't heard anything different regarding what to do as far as age. That verse, fear Allah and Allah will teach you, applies to everybody. Textual wise, I don't know of anything that specifies if you reach this age and there's a way to do it, right? That all of these things apply for everybody. But sometimes we need to see other people do it that look like us. Sometimes we need to hear stories as an encouragement, right? My wife was in the class with a sister, she was old shit, memorizing Quran. Talking about like grandma, older than you. She's old. And she's old shit. She's like, I don't want to exaggerate, mashallah. But it was like the age where anybody knows. You know how some people, they're so old, whatever you're doing, you know you got to help them. You can be the hold on. Stop what you're doing to help the person, because you know she was like at that age, and she was still. And I heard stories of people at 70 finishing the Quran. I heard stories of people older than that finishing the Quran, 80. But how do they do it? Even if, like Sheikh Taha has said one time, even if you did an ayah a day, right, and it took you 10 years or 20 years, he said 23 years. Right, but let's say it took a person 30 years to memorize the Quran. Right, the Quran was revealed over a time period of how long? 23 years. Right? Say if you finished in 10. Say if you took your time and it took you 10 years. Right? And like he said, you still finished the Quran in memory faster than it was revealed. It all goes back to the drive of each person, what the drive is. Because there are people older that do it. There are people who, as we say, I'm busy. There are people who are busy like us, and they do it. There are people whose situations are a little more strenuous and a little more difficult than our situations, and they do it. So it goes back to the drive of each person. How bad do you want to do that? How important to you is it? I don't know of any text for the elders, for people older, outside of the same things. That if these things are implemented, inshallah ta'ala, that it will help. And encouragement is that a lot of the Sahaba were older when they began learning. Abu Bakr, a lot of them were older when they began learning. It doesn't mean that they all finished the Quran, but it shouldn't be out of reach because there are stories of people who are doing it now. Inshallah. Any other questions?
What was the name of that book again? You said,
This one?
No, the one you said that Christ used before
40 hadith? Or after 40 hadith?
Was it before?
After. After Umdat al-Ahkam. Umdat al-Ahkam. Abdul Ghani al-Maqdisi. Rahimahullah. He got a nice story going at time for that, inshallah. We'll stop there, inshallah. Ta'ala, sallallahu alaihi wa sallam, barak nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. معلش. We went over and shit.